I've always been amazed of how Jesus sort of masterfully used questions to teach vital spiritual truths. You see, Jesus never asked a question because he needed to know the answer. He used questions kind of like a way a surgeon uses a scalpel to delicately cut into a whole new level of understanding. Let's talk about it. Hello, welcome again, Just Jesus Podcast. Thank you for joining us, wherever you're joining us from, whenever you're joining us. As always, it's good to have you. Thank you for joining us today. I've said join us enough, so if you haven't gotten the message, thanks for joining us. But anyways, good to have you. If you're new here to Just Jesus, it is exactly that. It is Just Jesus. We talk about Jesus from every angle we can possibly talk about him from, past, present, future. But more importantly, when we talk about Jesus, we're really trying to talk about the relevancy to Jesus today, to you and I today, because that's what it's all about. We're not just here to just dissect who Jesus is. We really want to know what this has to do with you and me today, 2024. So good to have you. If you're new to the Just Jesus Podcast, it is great to have you here. If you're a first-time listener, thank you for joining us. And if you're tracking, we're moving on. This is episode number 10 of the Just Jesus Podcast here on the Antioch West YouTube channel, which brings us to a very important point to start off with today. I asked this last time on the podcast, episode 9, just kind of where we are in this sort of infancy, and we're still here at the beginning. So I'm not suggesting we're a juggernaut here in any way, but I believe we have made a little bit of traction enough to have this conversation. And we had this conversation last time regarding whether or not it would be positive to leave the Just Jesus Podcast here on this Antioch West YouTube channel, or to potentially move off of this, create a separate Just Jesus channel on YouTube. Because at the core of Just Jesus is this a message that we're not talking about a church, a religion, or a particular set of doctrine or theology. We're really just looking at Jesus, hence the word Just Jesus. So in that message, it kind of, in my opinion, it kind of sent mixed signals because it was posted here on a church website. So, or church YouTube channel. So I ask those of you that would help me out. And obviously, we got some response back. And the response was overwhelmingly, yes. Yes. It would be great to move it. And so that's awesome. Just to kind of give you some insight, that's what the direction I was going for anyways, but I wanted to hear your opinion, especially those of you that have kind of connected with me on this journey. But anyways, so I made the decision, and we're going to launch the Just Jesus channel here on YouTube and Just Jesus Media in general. So that includes social media as well. We're working on that. We're still in the beginning stages. I'm hoping to get the YouTube started fairly soon here, potentially even by next week, to get a YouTube going here on Just Jesus. But here's the point. That's great, but I need your help. And this won't work unless you work with me, because we have a good subscriber base here on Antioch West. But when we move over there, we're starting a brand new channel with absolutely 0 subscribers. So I need you to help me to grow this channel the fastest, and that would be to help me convert by going over to that channel when we get it launched, and start viewing the podcast, listening to the podcast. I'm going to say viewing the podcast because I believe I'm going to start adding video to the podcast. If you're familiar with any kind of podcast on YouTube, it's not just the audio. but it's also the video. And then with that, in conjunction with the audio as well, the idea is to launch Just Jesus to the other podcast platforms as well, to get on Apple and to get on Spotify and the other ones. Anyways, so that's the goal here, to kind of do that now versus kind of waiting down the road, because if we kind of get moving here and get some more traction, then it might be more difficult. And then also it might open the door for more traction, because again, this is about not only for you to engage, but also to us to help share the message, and share the link and share with it, with those that we might feel like may be encouraged or impacted by the message here, because ultimately that's what it is. It's just Jesus. And so in order to kind of accomplish that, it would be better to do it sort of off, separate from Antioch West, which is the church that I pastor. So I don't want there to be a conflict here. And so that's sort of the decision. So for those of you that are listening, and you've made it 6 minutes into this long explanation, that's where we are right now. So it looks like I have secured the Just Jesus channel on YouTube. I don't believe you can, because there's nothing on that right now. I don't think, let me look right here real quick. I tried this and I don't think this actually works, because you can't find it yet, because it has absolutely no one post. It's nothing posted. So you can't actually find it yet. So if you go looking for it, you won't find it. There are a couple other ones that use Just Jesus as some kind of tagline. Anyways, ours will be the one for this particular Just Jesus Media will be distinctive with the logo at this point. But anyways, I say all that because if you go looking for it now, kind of beat me to the punch, you're not going to find it. And then you'll just think, well, maybe he wasn't telling the truth. And I am telling the truth, except right now there are no videos. There's no media posted on that. Hopefully that will change here enough that we can, at least you can have a landing spot to go to, and I'll already start to subscribe. So again, I need your help. That's the whole point of all this, not to get into this, is I need your help to kind of help transition us over to that side, to kind of start to build the Just Jesus Media growth. So that's sort of where we are right now. So I'm looking through all these. Yeah, even if you put in Just Jesus Media, it's not there, because if it is, it's so buried down in here, you'll never find it, which I don't really find that to be shocking, considering, oh, well, you can find the Just Jesus podcast off of Antioch West, but that's not the right one. So anyways, don't go looking for it yet, because there's nothing on there. However, when there gets something on there, it should be easier to find. And then you can subscribe over there. And then when we start to post not only podcasts, but other stuff that I'd like to branch out and do, if we have our own dedicated channel, I'd like to branch out a little further. So I said all that to say, for those of you that are a part of this journey or wanting to go on this journey and help, encourage, and challenge and be a part of this, because not only are you enjoying the broadcast for yourself, but you also feel like it can be some way you can connect and with those maybe you come in contact with, and you can share it with them. That's where we are. So I think that's the house cleaning for today regarding where we are. We made it 10 episodes here on the on Antioch West, and again, we haven't made huge traction, but enough feedback from you individually, for those of you that have actually contacted me directly, that I feel like there is enough interest in what we're doing to continue to grow that, and then not only that, but expand it further, and to kind of sort of connect all the dots, not just with Just Jesus Media on YouTube, but also to expand into the other platforms, to kind of bring a unified front to all this. Because again, to me, it's just it's the ability to connect with the message, and the message really centers around the fact of Jesus not being synonymous with religion, and sort of having that ability to connect with Jesus, because we've gone through it. We'll continue to go through it as we further this podcast, but just talking about the fact that how, Jesus has been connected with religion to the point where people have an issue with religion. They don't have an issue with Jesus. So to me, one of my desires is to separate those, because they're not one and the same. In fact, the first episode that I've been working on for the channel when we actually convert over there is exactly that. Is an episode or is a podcast regarding that exact topic, and that was Jesus and religion and why they weren't the same. In fact, why Jesus came to kind of do away with religion. And so that's kind of the message here. So if that's the case, to me, that's it's not one of, there's tons of channels out there where you can get all kinds of inspiration. There's tons of channels out there that you can get, podcasts out there. You can get good, theological teaching and things that may be more in depth to your spiritual journey, that it's going to talk about the Bible and things of that nature, which is all good. I'm saying none of that's wrong. However, this particular message that I have chosen, that I feel like I am compelled to be a part of, is the fact of just the promotion of Jesus and who he is, and then let the other part of the story play out. But just introducing people to Jesus, and also those who are already on a journey with Jesus, just encouraging and enriching your journey even greater, so that we can continue to just know more about him, be like him. That's just the message. So anyways, I think I don't want to just keep rambling on, but that's where we are. So if you have any, encouraging words, or maybe you have some thoughts on all this, or maybe you choose to, have some topics that you'd like to have, you think would be good for in that particular vein, things that we could discuss or talk about that would help sort of these, broader reaching topics, please let me know. I would love to hear your feedback, and then if there's something you feel like through conversations or things you have with people that, people really want to know about Jesus, then please share them with me. And my desire is to do these. My goal is to do these every week. So it's 52 different topics we've got to cover. I'm not expecting, even in all my, and all I have to bring to the table, can come up with 52 topics. But I believe if we work together, and combination of that, but more importantly is Jesus, he's the one that really matters, will help us, we'll get there. But I'd love to have you a part of this journey. I think for those of you that are listening, I really do. I sincerely appreciate that. So anyways, let's get into it today, because I like this is going to be something I think we'll revisit, because there's so much here to unpack, and we can sort of stay here for a while. And I've chosen not to just, I did the series earlier in the beginning, I think episodes 3, 4, 5, somewhere in like that. We did a 3-part series on the sort of the perfect storm, and talking about some historical context for Jesus within that perfect storm framework. But my goal is not to necessarily stay in one vein too long. I like to sort of have sort of a buffet type from week to week, so that it engages every person and every level that we possibly can, and not sort of getting fixated into one single sort of thought, or just, a historical context, or just, whatever it is might be. So I like the idea of bouncing around, and I'm sure there'll be something we'll land on. However, in this situation, this is so robust that obviously I don't plan on doing this. It's not turning into a multi-part podcast, but I definitely think there's enough here that one day, as we go further, we'll revisit this, because I sort of opened up, the teaser was the fact that it's amazing how just masterfully Jesus used questions to teach and to show vital spiritual truths. And what was said earlier, and I echo it again, is the fact when Jesus asked a question, he was not asking a question because he didn't know the answer. It's like I ask my kids questions that I know the answer to. I ask them a question because I want to know, do they know the answer? Or I wanted to know how they're going to answer it. So it wasn't like Jesus is asking questions because he just doesn't know. He knows the answer before the question's even asked. But as I talked about it before, Jesus used questions like a surgeon uses a scalpel to sort of delicately cut right into the heart of the truth and get to a brand new level of understanding. And he was a master at that. So I compiled here, and don't panic when I tell you this number, but I compiled 135 questions that Jesus asked. Now, there's some in here that probably don't have as much weight to them as others, but there's others that have great weight to them. So there's 135 questions, and again, I'm not going through all 135 today. That'd be a 17-hour podcast, and I don't think you are going to listen to that, and I don't know if I'll be able to last that long. Even those of you that think I'm long-winded, I don't think I could do that. So I'd like to just sort of start to go down the list here, and they're in no particular order. But I'd like to kind of go down the list a little bit. Well, I guess they are in particular order because the way I kind of compiled it, it's sort of an order. I started with Matthew, and we started with the questions that Matthew asked, and then we went to the questions in Mark, and we went to questions in Luke, and we end up with the questions in John. And so I guess maybe there is somewhat of an order. If you're familiar with the order of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, being the order that is typically we find in any Bible that you pick up, or the Bible you may have, or the Bible you have on your phone, you'll find that the order. So I guess there is an order. I was thinking maybe order just from the standpoint of, well, there's an order, I guess. So we're kind of going to go through these one by one. And again, not all 135. I don't even know how many. We may not even get down very far. And I don't want to just talk about and ask these questions. And so the point of this is not to ask these questions and then go on this long, elaborate discussion of the question. It really is to ask these questions in the framework of, if Jesus asked you that question today, what would be your answer? Because I think we definitely could ask these questions, and then we could dissect what when they were said, who they were said to, what was the context, what was the historical context, what was the the setting that they were asking, who was the all this stuff that could have lent itself to sort of this perfect answer that we could sort of piece together with all these different data points that we could say, okay, here's the perfect answer to that question. I'm not really interested, and I don't think the point would be to ask these from a theological standpoint. Again, I said it earlier, one of the things here in Just Jesus is I don't really necessarily ever want to get deep into theology. Not that Jesus and theology are not, don't go hand in hand, but I think the problem is when you sometimes get too deep in theology, you miss the message of just simply Jesus. And so I don't want to go so down the rabbit hole that I get so caught up that the message becomes more important than the messenger. The Just Jesus, whole point of Just Jesus is to focus on the messenger. The message is the messenger. I get that. But sometimes we can focus so much on what Jesus said that we forget who the one who is saying it. And that's the whole point, is the Just Jesus media and all that we're trying to do here is to get the focus back on the one that really matters. And the one that really matters is Jesus. And not to use his words as weapons, or to use Jesus as a weapon to kind of manipulate or to turn people into what we think they should be, but to simply use Jesus and who he is to have something to point to say, there's the person we believe in. That's the person we should be like. And then from there, let the image of Jesus Christ do the talking without us having to do the talking for him. Trust me, Jesus isn't at the point where he needs you to have to go out and explain everything. He's well able to do the talking. Now, he uses you and I to be his mouthpiece, but not his mouthpiece and where we use him as a weapon, but a mouthpiece where we proclaim so that we send people back to him. So anyways, so in these questions, and if you've never heard some of these questions, they are great questions that kind of go to larger things in our life. Jesus never asked surface questions. He didn't ask questions like, how you doing? How's it going? Every question Jesus asked had not only maybe an immediate response, but it was always going to something deeper. He may have asked a question that on first glance has a surface response, but it was always a deeper thing Jesus was going to, because again, the Bible says, and we know the story of Jesus and what it was about, Jesus was all about the heart. He wasn't really getting all worked up on what was going on outside. He was really going to the heart of the matter, to what was going on inside somebody. That's why Jesus associated with people that some deemed not worthy, because Jesus wasn't looking at what was going on the outside. Jesus was focusing on the inside. And some people who you would have thought he should have associated with, he didn't associate with, or even had sort of animosity with these groups, because again, outside they looked right, but internally they weren't lining up, and Jesus wasn't judging them on the outside, he was judging them on the heart. So I think in all of these questions, as you approach them for your own answer, and again, that's the whole point of this today, and as we come back later on and hopefully explore these even to a greater degree, because there's so many here. The whole point of this is not necessarily just to say, okay, here's the question, here's the right answer, because here's the context and here's the interpretation. It's if Jesus was sitting right there next to you right now, wherever you are, and he turned to you and asked you this question, what would be your response? If he wasn't asking you these questions and you were going and you didn't ask him and you didn't give some kind of, pre-programmed theological response. For those of you that know the Bible or know something about the Bible, when he asks you this question, you're going to come back with this pre-programmed, well, here's the answer. Well, don't answer the question by just giving a pre-programmed response. Really, when you ask these questions, what is your true answer? So that's kind of what I want to do today, because again, this is just Jesus. It's about past, present, and future. But more importantly, it's about what does Jesus mean to you and I today? This is what we're trying to get at. We're trying to get at the fact that what is he today? To you and me sitting here, whether he's sitting in your car right next to you right now, or your home, or whatever you're doing, whatever you may be doing right now, where you're listening to me in your ear or on your phone or in your car, or whatever you might be doing. If Jesus was right there in that setting and he asked you these questions, what would be your immediate response? Without going to your phone and saying, hold on 1 second, let me look up a good answer. Let me go to ChatGPT and see what ChatGPT says. What would you say? So let's get into it. First question. If you love those who love you, now these are questions, I'm not asking these rhetorically. These are questions Jesus asked. And again, I know every one of these have context, and maybe a few of them will talk about the context, but I don't really want to go too deep down that hole, because I think that questions have enough power within themselves to not even lend itself to a deep discussion. Question number one is this: if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? So if Jesus was sitting there right now and turned to you and said, are you only loving people that love you? Because ultimately, this is sort of the crux of the message of Jesus Christ, right? This is one of those key foundational pillars of everything that he did, and that is as someone who desires to be a follower of Jesus Christ, not a follower of a religion, not a follower of a particular doctrine or a creed or an ideology, but I want to be a follower of Jesus Christ. Then it should be one of the pillars of my life is I shouldn't just love people who love me. And I don't want to add to what Jesus asked, but I'll just add this. Do you only love people that can love you back? Maybe that's a greater way of asking it. I'm not trying to help Jesus out here. I'm just expanding on the question to give it more of a context of a modern way of asking. And that is, do you only love people that love you back or have the ability to love you back? Because if you do that, then are you truly like Jesus? Because sort of that's, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough. I think I do. I think I am, but I don't want to even speculate, because even though I feel like I'm familiar, it may be unfair. But I don't have enough information or understanding about cultures outside of the United States to make a definitive statement. So I know we have some that are listening to us from other countries. So in your country, it may not be this way. So I can only speak of America. And so I can only speak to the culture that I'm most familiar with, and that is the American culture. And I know from a fact from American culture, that is something that is slipping further and further down the rung of the ladder. And that is, we do not do a good job at loving those who can't love us back. Because in our world, we give to get. We give, but we give with the expectation to get something back. We give with the understanding of reciprocation. Therefore, are we truly giving? That's a whole nother subject for another day. But in the context of the question that Jesus is asking is, can you really say in the world we live, and I say world, and I always use that term just to stop for a moment. This is not really a just Jesus subject, but just something I think it's worth. I really, honestly, we need to wake up a little bit. And I'm going to say this, and maybe this is not the right place to say it. So hopefully, because I know there's a lot of different people listening to this, and I don't want to offend anybody, but it's worth saying from this standpoint of, I'll have to be honest with you. There are 8 billion people in this world. As of right now, let me just verify this to make sure. There's 8 billion people in the world. And as of right now, according to the current statistics, there are 333 million Americans. So there's 333 million Americans. And I got, oh, guess this is it. This is off the census.gov population clock. So as of right now, there are 336,311,860, and the 3 is just creeping up there. So 863. Well, 864. The world population is 8,042,004,700, and it's just clicking at a faster rate. This is actually interesting. Totally off the subject, but I like numbers. There's 1 birth every 9 seconds, 1 death every 10 seconds. That's interesting. That's U.S. statistics, I guess. Yeah, 1 birth every 9 seconds, 1 death every 10 seconds. That's the U.S. statistics. Interesting. So anyways, I digress. My point I'm making. Sorry. We're back. We're back. We might need to start the show again. There we go. Reset. Play the intro music. Hey, welcome to Just Jesus. We're back. No, anyways, the point I'm trying to make with all this is, and I'll just do some, again, just to make sure I'm not that, well, I hit the wrong button there. I got to get to the right, there we go. There's my calculator. Let's just do some quick math just because I think it's worth doing. I'm getting to a point here and we'll get back to the question and you won't have to hear me ramble. Let's just use that. I'll just round them off because I feel like it's an easier number to do. Let's just use 333 million and then we'll do the 8 billion. It's hard to do on this calculator because I can make sure I have 8 million, 80 million, 800 million, 8 billion. There we go. Yes. All right. So the U.S. population, and here's my point, getting to my point. Here we go. The U.S. population is 4%. 4%. 4% of the world population. So this is, I guess this does have to relate to Just Jesus. I'm getting a little fired up here. I got to calm down. Here we go. It's got to do with a lot of it. To be honest with you, to be truthful, love's got to do with a lot of this because it's 4%. 4%. The U.S. population is just 4%. Can I ask you a question? This is Just Jesus podcast, so this is a great place to ask this question. Who does Jesus love and how many people, who did he die for? He died for all 8 billion people. 8 billion people. Not for the 4%. He died for all 100%, which is currently 8 billion people. So I have to be honest with you. I get tired. It's a pet peeve of mine, but I get tired when Americans try to monopolize Jesus. Oh, this is going to go off the rails quick. I know it's going to go off the rails. This is going off the rails. Well, here goes the death of the Just Jesus podcast. And here's the problem I have with that is that Jesus died for all 8 billion people, not for the only 333 million United States. And so what I mean by that is we Americans have to stop monopolizing Jesus. Jesus is not American. And therefore, we got to stop making Jesus American and trying to manipulate Jesus with American values. There, I said it. It is just Jesus. Because if I'm a follower of Jesus, I'm not trying to make Jesus American. I'm going to make Jesus who he is, and he's just Jesus. He's not an American version of Jesus. And why I say that is because when I say I know our world's a mess, when I'm using that terminology, when I say our world, I'm talking about the United States. And I get it. The world in general is going crazy. We got missiles being launched and stuff happening. And oh, by the way, if you didn't know, there's still a war in Ukraine and Russia. There's still craziness going on. There's stuff happening. I get the world in general. But when we in our little American world say the world is just going down, we're really meaning because the fact right now inflation's out of control. There's an election coming up. We don't know what's going to happen. You know, we're feeling the pinch on all sides. So we Americans are like, well, this is, you know, Jesus needs to get his act in gear. And when I ask a question that we started this whole point with before I went on my little soapbox here. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Really, that's a question Americans answer in a whole complete way, because ultimately we Americans we don't play well with others. Let's just call it. This is not an anti-American place. I'm sitting in a room right now. There's an American flag in here. So, I'm not turning this to a political talk show. We're not going into discussion. I'm making the point because this is just Jesus. The point is we don't play well with others. And what I mean by that is America is all about, we're very I-centered, self-centered. And an example here. I'm on question 1 and we're only 10 minutes. We're not even getting 135. We're not even going to get to 3 at this rate, but it's good anyways. We're teaching our daughter how to drive. She's 16. She's learning how to drive. And so in the state of Maryland, which is where we are, in the good old US of A, there is a law that a new driver has to have 60 hours of supervised driving before they are permitted to go take the driving test. And so that means you as a parent get to ride in the death trap with your child for 60 hours. Well, 54, because 6 of those hours are with an instructor at the driving school. But the 54 other hours, you as the parent get to drive in the death trap with your newly learned child who is taking your life and their life and everyone else's around you in their own hands. And so I feel very close to Jesus the last couple of months because I've spent a lot of time with my daughter in the car and she's doing well, but let's be honest. Whew, I tell you what, it's been good. Now she's doing really well, but the point I'm making is that we're trying to teach her not only obviously when we're driving around, we're not just teaching her here's the gas pedal, here's the brake, you know, here's the gear shift, here's the steering wheel. Well, now we're starting to talk about more. You know, we just had a little driving lesson today. We picked her up she's in school, and so we picked her up from school and let her drive home. And on the way home, we were letting her drive, and we were pointing out different things. And a lot of things we're pointing out is the fact that people are crazy. That was lesson 1 today. That was what we looked at today. It's AKA people are crazy. And the reason why we say that is it was the fact that you could feel, literally driving down the road, you could feel this sort of everybody's going, is like on supercharged. Now, I will tell you, just in case you don't know this, and maybe you're listening from one of these countries, but I've driven around the world. I've driven in many, many places, been around around the world in many different settings. We actually have pretty decent driving. You've never really experienced driving until you've driven like country like India or Pakistan. I mean, there are no lanes. I don't even know what you're doing. I have no clue. Don't even have a clue. There's not even suggestions. It's just a mass of metal moving in somewhat the same direction, and it's chaos. The most stressful driving you can do here in America usually is like driving in DC or driving in New York City or driving in LA. Some of these major cities. New York City down in Manhattan is always interesting. especially with the cab drivers driving around, and they obviously know the streets a million times better than you do, and so they're whipping by you, and you're just trying not to run a red light and kill a pedestrian. So we told our daughter, listen, people are crazy. And one of the things we said was because people have this identity that this sort of, everybody's sort of trying to get somewhere. It's about my agenda, and again, I know sometimes, hey, listen, I'm on that side. I am not pointing fingers at anybody, because a lot of times I'm behind the wheel. I'm like, I got places to go. I have not always been the most courteous driver. I get it. That's why I don't have a I love Jesus bumper sticker on the back of my car, because I do love Jesus, but my driving doesn't always reflect my love for Jesus. Okay. I need an amen button over here on my board here. Can I get an amen? Comment down below if you're one of those drivers. No, just don't do it. But anyways, oh, by the way, like, comment, subscribe. Please do that. It's helping. It's helping. Seriously, it's helping. So continue to do so. So anyways, we told our daughter it's stress out there. It's just tension. I mean, you got distracted driving and all that craziness, but just because at the core of it is this, we are looking at the world through a very singular lens. It's all about me. It's all about me. I'm very singular focused. And because of that, if Jesus asked you that question, your first response would be, of course I love people who don't love me, but he'll love me. But go deeper. Now, are you courteous to people? Are you kind to him? Yeah. But are you truly loving people? Are you truly loving people? And love is a part of love in Jesus' framework. Are you preferring them, putting them first, their needs above your needs? Are you loving people who can't love you back? And then he follows that up. The next question he asked. So he asked this question, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? The next question, the very next question he asked is this. If you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? So at the crux of these two questions, he's basically saying, if all we ever do is like people that are like us, we're really not getting much traction. If we only like people that fit in our world, fit with our own economic status, our own color, our own culture, if we only really relate to, connect to, and love those people, we're really not making traction. In fact, there was another place that Jesus mentioned this, and he said, because even the tax collectors love other tax collectors. He said, even the sinners love other sinners. So this is so crucial point to make. And again, I'm not making this from a theological standpoint. This is more about a focusing on Jesus standpoint is if Jesus was here today, would he be a Democrat or Republican? Ooh, hello. But Tina, yes, Tina, we need you. It has to do a lot, Tina, to be honest with you. Because if Jesus was here today, what would he be? Would he be a Democrat or a Republican? The reason I ask that is because in our world today, you have got to pick some side. You're a Democrat, you're a Republican, you're for this, you're against this, you're with this, you're with that group. You cheered for this team, you're against this team. Everybody's picking a side. And while Jesus did have a side, and his side was Jesus, Jesus knew how to stand up for who he was, but also knew how to, and I'll use this terminology, also know how to reach across the aisle, not with an olive branch, but also reach around across the aisle with compassion and love. I know today, I mean, we're especially, I get it. I don't need to be told it. I know. Sitting here recording this right now, I'll probably post it in the next day or two, but today, if I'm recording, it's Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. I know because of that, we are what? 7 months away? 6.5 months away from an election? And we all know that the elections are not getting more united. They're getting more divisive, and with all that's at stake with this election, it's going to be more divisive, and all you got to do is just go on your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed or your X formerly known as Twitter or YouTube or somewhere like that, and you will definitely get a full dose of one side or the other. And while I believe there are issues that are important, I don't believe any issue in itself is strong enough. Boy, I better be careful in saying this because I don't want to, you could really take my words and miscue them. I don't believe any issue is strong enough that it can make me use or allow me to use Jesus as a weapon to defend my position. Ooh. I'm kind of navigating a very slippery road here. Now, I know Jesus stood up for things. I don't even want to get into the whole political, because I mean, I can hear some of you now trying to, what would be one of those things? Let's just leave all that. This is just Jesus. We're not talking about church, doctrine, religion, and we're definitely not talking about politics. The point I'm trying to make is the fact is, if we can only love people from our own political party, if we can only get along with people that are on our same color, if we only can get along with people that had the same economic or educational background, or the people that are connected with us, if that's all we ever can love, then what are we doing? Jesus said, if you can only meet your brothers, what are you doing more than others? I got to be honest with you, and I know some don't agree with me on this, but I mean, it's worth saying. I got a real problem sometimes when these people stand out there in front of these places where, whether it's an abortion clinic or whether it's some kind of other place where someone's doing, whether it's an LGBTQ event, whatever it is, and they use Jesus as a weapon. I got a problem with that. Because I don't believe Jesus should be a weapon. It shouldn't be a message of condemnation. It should be a message of love. And I'm not saying that Jesus is okay with anything that's going on, and he's okay, and in Jesus, well, it doesn't matter, you can do whatever you want. I do believe Jesus has things that are foundational principles by which, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you should live by. I get those things. However, we can't use those things that Jesus taught us and turn around and use them as a weapon, because Jesus had time and time again to do that same exact thing, but he always chose to take the love route. He could have had times where he could have blasted them. I mean, there was a great example, and again, I'm trying not to get too deep in here, but here we are anyways. There's a particular time where they caught this lady in adultery. They bring her to Jesus, and this is a perfect example for Jesus to stand up for what's right, because this is obviously something that would legitimately happen. There was no one there that refuted the fact that she was caught in adultery. It was obvious that she was guilty. She even knew she was guilty because she never refuted her guilt. And yet, in that moment, Jesus chose the love route. So my question to you today, and the relevancy of these first two questions, and if we do this, is going to be a 722-part series. But the two questions is, if you only love those who love you back, what reward will you get? And if you only love your brothers, what are you doing more than others? These are sort of the questions, right, that I think we all have to ask ourselves, because that's the core of all of it, because our world is trying to divide us. Our world is trying to always categorize us as one side or the other. And in the great old US of A, you are picking a side. You're Republican and you're Democrat. And if you're Republican, you can't even agree with Democrats. And if you're a Democrat, you can't agree with Republicans. And you've got to stand up for your side of the aisle, because we're both right. You know what I've learned? If two people are right, then actually both are wrong. Both can't be right. As they always say, there's two sides to a story. There's actually three truths in every story, they say. There is side A, side B, and truth is probably somewhere in the middle. It's the same thing. We always have to choose a side. And we think we're right because we chose that side. And the fact of the matter is that right is probably somewhere in the middle between the two sides. And the only way you can truly find it is ultimately to love others who are not like you. That's the core of it. If that was just simply our number one, if we couldn't, I mean, listen, I said this before, but it's become sort of my new little, I like this. I got plenty of soapboxes to stand on, but this is one of my new ones, because it to me just crux of the matter is people want to go down all these deep, dark rabbit holes of the Bible and theology. And you go on YouTube and you go on stuff and people are going 1,700 layers deep and they're trying to say, well, this is that. And I mean, my goodness. And I don't say this is that here's the other part I was going to get to when I was talking about the U.S. and the world, right? We had an eclipse. That was awesome. It was amazing. Some of you that were listening, you actually got to see totality. You got to see totality. I didn't get to see totality. I just, whatever we had here, 80, 90%. But it was still cool. It got, kind of dark. We didn't have total darkness like some of you did, but it was still kind of unique, right? It was interesting. However, at that time, we were the only place that was having an eclipse right here. This little swath. But yet we were interpreting it as world events. I mean, people were on there. This is the reason why the end of the world is coming, because right now in the middle of Indianapolis, Indiana, there's an eclipse, and that must mean God is coming back. And then people were like, they went deep down the rabbit hole. They're like, well, in 2017, there was an eclipse, and in 2024, the eclipse, and when you cross them over, they make a perfect X right on the US of A. That's it. I know it. Pack up the ship, honey. We're going home. 4%. 4% of the population. 4%. And of that 4%, I think only 80 million Americans or something like that were exposed to totality. That means the rest of us, including me, the other, 240, something like that, 250. The other 250 million Americans, including me, I guess we missed it. The reason I say that is because, again, this sort of centered viewpoint, if we go so deep into all this stuff because we're interpreting it through our own world, our own viewpoint, our own little spot on this rock in the universe, and I'm interpreting the world based off my own single viewpoint, or even expanding that viewpoint to my own regional viewpoint, or even getting bigger and get my own viewpoint of the fact we're Americans and, oh my goodness, we've got all this stuff going on. And have you seen inflation? Have you seen how much it costs to go to the grocery store? Chick-fil-A. I got 8 nuggets the other night, Chick-fil-A, for my son. 8 nuggets, a fry, and a drink, and a chocolate shake. $15. I can't even say it. It hurts me to say it. What in the world is happening to our world that 8 pieces of a chicken, I didn't even get the whole chicken. I got 8 pieces of him. I think they're even 8 pieces. Who knows where that stuff comes from? But according to Chick-fil-A, I got 8 pieces of a chicken. I've got about, 15 waffle fries that make up probably maybe a full potato. I don't even know if I got a full potato. I got half a cup of ice with some soda in it. Oh, by the way, I did get a milkshake. I guess that's what gets expensive. Cows cost money. $15. It better be my pleasure, Chick-fil-A. It's not your pleasure. It's my pain. $15. And man, I'm looking at that. I'm going, well, this is definitely it. This is it. Jesus must be coming back. This is it. This is it. To the end of the world. It's the end of the world as we know it. No. Well, you know what? The world may be it, but it's not because my Chick-fil-A cost me $15 or the fact there was totality moving through Indianapolis, Indiana. The fact of the matter is that it's bigger than that. And so in this point to my rambling here, I've had a lot of rambling today. I apologize for that. If you've lasted this long, I do apologize. The point I'm trying to make in this was, if you focus on all this stuff, I mean, like you're way down the deep in the rabbit hole, and you know, there's 66 and all this, and the Bible says this and all this, and blah, 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 blah. Great. How about this? Let's start with those 2 questions. If every person that said they believed in Jesus Christ used just those 2 questions as the core of their being, it would change the world. If just those 2 questions, if that became the ethos of Christianity, if that was the one right there in the just that's it would change the world. But no, we're like 1,700 steps past that because that's not really something we should worry about. Yet Jesus did say, if you want to be one of mine, you're going to be known how you love. So, might want to take that into consideration before we dismiss all that. So maybe for you and I, Jesus was sitting there today and asked that question. Instead of sloughing off going, I got that. Ask me a hard one, Jesus. Ask me something hard. Ask me one of those really tricky ones. Ooh, ask me one of those ones about the Old Testament that have all the, the types and symbols to it. And I'll tell you what I know. Because, back then I know all kinds of stuff. I know how to interpret the different types of threads and material used on the tabernacle. And I know how to itch all together. I know exactly how many hammer swipes it took to drive a stake into the southwest corner of the tabernacle. And oh, by the way, I knew the name of the stonemason who carried up the stone, who made the left corner of the temple. I knew his name. I knew where he lived. I knew his wife and kids. I know everything about it. Ask me one of those hard questions. He said, yeah, by the way, do you only love people that love you back? And if you only greet your brothers, what are you doing more than others? I know that's, I don't like easy ones. Let's get to the more challenging ones. Wait a minute. Time out. Let's just start there. And guess what? If we start there, man, it would be, that's plenty of challenge, because honestly, every day I come in contact with people, to be honest with you, it's a little challenging. It's a little challenging. I have a hard time some days loving myself. Can I be honest with you? Can I get an amen? I don't always do a bad job at that. The Lord's helping with that, but let's be frank. If I could just get up every day with the passion, just, you know what? I'm going to love everybody, no matter who they are. And not just because I say it. I'm going to do it. Don't forget, love is not a saying. It's not a bumper sticker. It's an action. Love is an action. So, wow. We got two questions down the list. Come back the next 712 weeks. We'll be at 135 somewhere between now and the next time there's an eclipse in 2044. We'll get this done, I promise. Anyways, Just Jesus, episode number 10. In the books. Moving on. I think by next time we'll have we'll be on the new channel. Fingers crossed, we'll see. I think we're working on some stuff behind the scenes to get that done. And then I'll need you to help me out. Go over to the new channel, subscribe, watch, thumbs up, share it, tweet it. Post it, whatever you got to do. It's spread the message. Just Jesus media all over. Social, Facebook, Instagram. I don't know if we're going to TikTok yet. I don't know, but we'll see. But anyways, God bless you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for giving a thumbs up. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sharing. Just Jesus. Until next time, God bless.